I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Tom from Iowa, go ahead.
I'm grateful for the watches that Plainfield has a few times a week. They're very helpful. I'm also grateful for practitioner support that I've been getting. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. I must say that the organ music has been outstanding. It is most enjoyable to listen to the prelude music, actually all the music. I am most grateful for the music which adds so much to our services and our meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this service and this powerful readings. This all reaches out to all mankind. Tonight, I would like to express gratitude for our practitioners, Mrs. Eddy, and all that is made available to us at Plainfield in order that we may gain a better understanding of God. One book that is available is called Addresses by Martha Wilcox and includes an article called Scientific Thinking. This article really helped me understand that my right thinking does not make the perfection of God appear, but correct thinking enables me to realize the absolute truth that is already established. Thanks to Jeremy, who posted this article on the internet calendar on my phone on February 13th. It is all done, the Alpha and Omega. God is all in all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Thank you. During our roundtable discussion on Sunday, February 12th, this quote from Henry David Thoreau was mentioned. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation and go on to the grave with a song still in them. All throughout my childhood, I lived a life of quiet desperation, quietly suffering, not only unnoticed by others, but clearly unable to notice the toll it was taking on my own mental state. I felt at ease living in the shadows. My family said I was shy. We were all just living in survival mode. There was no reason for expressing love or giving gratitude for anything. Life was lived in fear. That's just the way it was. Out of sight of those around me, I searched for peace. Sometimes I would sit atop a tall pine tree and take in all the beauty of nature, or listen for the whippoorwill calling at night. For me, it was my salvation. It was a moment of sanity, and the only thing that made sense. I didn't understand how the world could be so cruel and untrustworthy. Where was love? Where was life? And where was truth? I wanted to climb up the tallest mountain and yell, "Stop!" I prayed often to the unknown God to take me away from it all. Later in life, I stopped searching for answers. The rumination about the wrongs I had endured and the life I longed to live but could not obtain grew worse. I could not stand to be alone with my thoughts, so I did whatever I could to drown out the noise, including taking pain pills in excess. I became cruel and hateful. I had lost my moral courage, my sense of worth, and became engrossed in my own suffering. I was dying and desperately needed help. A friend urged me to call a practitioner from this church. After a few years of deliberation, thinking that no one would understand, I was finally able to force myself to make the call. I never felt so loved in all my life. I knew for the first time there was a God, and He loved me. It took some time to untangle the web and trust everything my practitioner was telling me. But after many sleepless, tear-filled nights, the dream was broken, and I was healed. I no longer live a life of quiet desperation. I have a new song to sing. for the past is gone, and I have much work to do for God. Christian Science has awakened me to my true inheritance as the child of God. As I go forward, I continue to see God ever more apparent in the world. I am learning to watch my thoughts and pray daily, Thy kingdom come. Let the reign of divine truth, life, and love be established in me and rule out of me all sin. And may Thy word enrich the affections of all mankind and govern them. From the Daily Duties by Mary Baker Eddy. I am so grateful for my practitioner for the continual support she has given me and the healings that have occurred under her care. I am grateful for this church, the Bible studies and roundtable discussions that help me to understand God and my relationship with Him. I am grateful to Mrs. Eddy for having the courage to give this science to the world. I thank God every day for the blessings I have been given. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for those readings tonight and for the testimonies so far. I am grateful for what I have learned here at Plainfield about starting my day, and I know it has been very helpful when faced with challenges that come up. One afternoon at work, I hurt my back. It was very uncomfortable and hard to move, and I still had a couple of hours of activity left. I appreciate my practitioner for encouraging me to commit to my heart and memory citations from the Bible on science and health. And because of this, I found it very helpful at that moment to have it to turn to, since I had nothing to read at hand. I made an effort to think about the meaning of the words as I went through the different lines that I could remember. It helped me gain calm and assurance of God's care and control. I was able to finish my day at work. By bed, the pain had lessened and I was slept. I was also able to return to work the next day without problems. And by the second day, I was back to normal. I'm very grateful for God's care for each one of us that can be felt in practical ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
In the lesson this week on mind, there is a citation that is a favorite of mine, and it's from Psalms, and it goes, "The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea." When I was expecting my first child, I worked with this daily. It was just very comforting, and I reasoned that the noise of many waters was materia medica, which makes very loud and persistent claims on expectant mothers. It was just comforting to know that God's laws were mightier than any of the so-called operating material laws. At the time, I was presented with something concerning, and 20 years later, I can't even remember specifically what that was, but it disappeared naturally and is testament to the fact that we need only remember the good of the past, which was brought out recently in a Bible study, I think. My son was born very quickly and harmoniously, and the other two children as well. Thank you so much for the readings about man's inseparability from God.
Thank you. Fairley from Maryland, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the readings on our inseparability from God. That made a true impression on me. I am so grateful to be a member of the Plainfield Church and to be learning and progressing gradually in living the Christian life in Christian Science. Yesterday I had to do a number of things crowding my day. But being aware of God's ever-presence as I'm learning gradually to do. The day unfolded with almost amazingly smooth transitions. The right parking places opened up just as I needed them. It was really a sense of harmonious unfoldment throughout that day. I'm also learning from Plainfield, as Jesus told his disciple to watch. I'm very grateful for that and for all the help I received from God and Jesus, Mrs. Eddy, and Plainfield, and my practitioner at Plainfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Day from Georgia. Go ahead.
Thank you. This morning, I woke up with a headache, which lasted throughout the day. So I went about doing my lesson and taking time to prepare my thought for tonight's service, asking God for the right testimony several times. About an hour before leaving work, I took a quick break, during which a coworker shared that he was suffering from allergies. The thought that came to me after was there is no power apart from God. This is what I needed to finally break the mesmerism. I thought about tonight's service and the fact that I decided this morning not to be distracted from its importance no matter what. I'm so grateful for the daily duties which remind us to defend ourselves daily against aggressive mental suggestion or the thought of the existence of anything unlike good. I'm finding that the most effective way to do so is to affirm the truth that God, good, is the only power there is, and there's no two ways about it. I'm thankful for the consistent instruction in this church, which gives us the necessary tools to do God's work in order to protect ourselves and bless the world each day. Thank you so much for tonight's readings, for the music, and for all the testimonies. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I am becoming more aware of my state of consciousness as so-called problems appear in my life. Things may appear beyond any solution, but turning it over to God always brings about the answers that I need. Since I was very young, I wanted to know, what is this truth that would set us free? I have found my answer in Christian Science. I am so very, very grateful to my practitioner for her work and what I have been learning through her, and for the informative Bible studies and roundtables. Thank you so much for tonight's readings and tonight's program.
Thank you. Craig.
I thank very much for the readings today and for the music, which is really uplifting. I really needed to be strengthened more, to know that we're never separated from God. I've been so blessed in this church, but there's always room for even greater character improvement. God has been very good to allow me to have all the things that I need to support my family and church, and have challenges, interesting challenges, feeling like I'm making a difference in various ways. But just recently, I had some task at job, and I don't set the schedule or the particular task, but I'm giving it. Well, it took courage to be able to tell people when I opened the onion of the task that it was more involved than I had expected. It appeared it was going to take longer than expected. It's not very welcomed information. So, but I prayed and I did have the courage, saying that honestly, I figured I should best be honest. That's what God would want, to be honest. And I gave them several weeks ahead information that it looked like it was going to be a little longer than they expected. They didn't like that, but it was what I felt. So I reassessed it, and I said, if I did this and this, maybe I could improve on it, and I gave them an updated improved value, which meant I spent more of my time, off time, doing it. Well, the lessons, I would have beaten myself up previously. The lesson really helped me. It said, basically, don't worry about what other people are thinking and feeling, just do what is right. The citation for 15, and the response reading, it says, but he that is spiritual judgeth all things, yet he himself is judge of no man. Which I claim that I am spiritual and that God judges me, and that encourages all things will work out. Well, I worked steadfastly, praying, and I made good progress today. And it just told me, if I didn't have this attitude of setting myself to God's standard, not to be pushed around or dishonest, I wouldn't have made progress. I would have either kept beating myself up, and there would have been a lot of, I just war within myself, and failure probably. I thank God for the character of courage and just waiting for God to judge and to direct, because I definitely did not know which way to go. Thank God for character changes in His church.
Thank you. Jeremy.
During this past Sunday's roundtable, one of the topics discussed was the difference between personality and individuality. This got me thinking of the drastic difference between the way I was and how I am now. From a very young age, I was told that I was introverted and bad at talking to people and unable to be happy. These supposed truths haunted me for many years, and during that time, I lived up to them very well. I tried to tailor my personal and professional life to these traits, and not surprisingly, I never had many friends, I never spoke much, and I was miserable. After coming to Plainfield, things began to change. It became very clear that these imposed limitations had no true bearing on who I was, and definitely did not define who God created me to be. Over time, with the ceaseless help of all that this church offers, and with daily practitioner support, I've been able to see through the nonsense and finally start getting a glimpse of the real Jeremy. God's idea is not scared of being around people, nor is He unable to communicate. He is filled with joy and a desire to do good and to bring blessings to all mankind. Christian Science has shown me that this is true of the real me because it is true of God. How can the real me, as God's reflection, be different than Him? I'm so grateful to be free, or at least in the process of becoming free, of the lies and limitations of personality. I'm very grateful for Christ Jesus, Mary Baker Eddy, and all past and present workers who have demonstrated our oneness with God, because it is clear that without this work, I would not be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom from New York. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the members of the church. There are so many people who they participate and they volunteer, and they care for the church and all its members, and that is something to be very thankful for. And I think this the watch this week relates to that. And in there it says, as we rise into the consciousness of eternal harmony, we must feel we are taking all mankind with us. So it's an unselfishness. And, I just want to say thank you to the church and all of the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi from Maryland, go ahead.
Good evening. I was very grateful this week for this week's lesson on mind, as it reminded me of a demonstration that my son had when he was in high school. He was preparing for the college entrance exams, also known as the SAT exams. And as the big day approached that he was to take them, he became more and more anxious. I reminded him that he was a good student and that he had prepared very well by taking a course in preparing for your college entrance exams. But it seemed that no amount of encouragement from me or the family or any of his friends or his teachers seemed to help. On the big day that he was to take them, my son was so stressed out that his stomach ached, he was nauseous, and he was in tears. He said he didn't want to sit for the exam that day, and he claimed he was just too sick. And that's when I suggested that we call a Christian Science practitioner from this church. His fingers and hand were trembling as he dialed her number, but within a few seconds, I saw that his face changed from fear into a big grin because he was met with so much love. The practitioner spoke to him of God's great love for him, and she reminded him that God was mind, and God was his mind. She told him that God gave the questions, and God gave the answers. She told him to repeat that truth to himself throughout the test, and that he would know all that he needed to know when he needed to know it. Finally, she ended the call by saying that she would be right there helping him throughout the day. And she told him to remember that he could do all things through Christ that strengtheneth him. Well, the results of the exam were extraordinary. They were far better than he imagined. Also, he reported to me after the test that he wasn't nervous at all. In fact, he was suddenly confident. And when he thought he didn't know something, he repeated, God knew. And then the answer would come to him. Well, after that, the results of the test came back, and his guidance counselor, when the guidance counselor received the scores, told him, with scores like this, any university in the country would be happy to accept you. Take your pick. I am just so grateful for the practitioner on the case at this time and for the loving, strong assurance that she gave my son. I am grateful for this week's lesson on mind and for all the things that I've learned by coming to this church all these years. And thank you for tonight's very strong, wonderful readings and this service. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda from Missouri, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight, I too would like to express my profound gratitude for this church, and in particular the practitioner support that I've received. There are so many things that I appreciate about this church. We have a beautiful website that Jeremy meticulously maintains. We have the ability to participate in services no matter where we may be. We have wonderful materials available on the website and the dedication of its members. And of course, very importantly, the practitioner support, which has provided such comfort and help beyond measure. One of the things I am very grateful for, especially, though, is the practical application of Christian Science, the pure science discovered by Mrs. Eddy, that we are encouraged to apply here to the best of our ability every day and really every moment. I'm very grateful to have it reinforced that this science is a demonstrable one and not just a theoretical or comforting belief system. While in my particular case, many healings are still ongoing and many things are still seeming to appear in order to be healed, whereas before I would have felt very overwhelmed and helpless due to anxiety, fear, and depression, and as another testifier referenced this evening, essentially experiencing a life of quiet desperation. thanks to the instruction and support of this church, I am slowly understanding that whatever the problem may be, or however long it has seemed to be, it is absolutely nothing before God. I'm learning how to stand up to, not run from, and how to meet each problem or fear with the developing courage and confidence of divine authority that we all reflect from our Father, Mother, God. Thank you to all participating in tonight's service and for those very wonderful readings.
Thank you. Jeff.
Today, this week's lesson on mind is a goodie. And in the responsive reading, 1 Corinthians, eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. I didn't quite know what that meant, so I did a little reading in the recommended sources, and I think it means it tells me that I've never seen, nor heard, nor even imagined all the marvelous, amazingly fascinating things that God will do for me if I love him, trust him, and put his principles into practice. As I surrender my life to God, every experience of living will grow increasingly more wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight I'd like to express my gratitude for our textbook and for all the answers that it gives to every problem that we can face. On page 468, we learn about the scientific statement of being. I cannot thank Mrs. Eddy enough and truly for how God led her to write this, because it seems to answer everything. It says that there is no life, truth, intelligence, nor substance in matter. All is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation, for God is all in all. Spirit is immortal truth. Matter is mortal error. Spirit is the real and eternal. Matter is the unreal and temporal. Spirit is God, and man is the image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. This has been a great help. I often go back to it because it seems to be the answer for everything. In this do we find that we are truly spiritual individualities, and that in this we have everything that we need. There's a beautiful article by Mrs. Eddy on the carousel, Possession. It tells us to possess this kingdom that Jesus said is within all of us. And I think we can use it in many ways when the sense of lack comes or the sense of fear. We can ask ourselves, am I really taking possession of what God has given me? This kingdom, what does it mean? It helps me a great deal to know that it is what gives us that power, that conviction, the faith that is our staff to lean on. I'm so grateful for what Mrs. Eddy has left and what she went through to give it to all mankind. I'm grateful that in this church, God is leading us to do our best to share this great gift to all mankind, and particularly now that when we know this is needed most. Grateful to be here. Thank you for the beautiful readings, and thank you for this whole service and everybody's testimony.
Thank you.